It's Law's birthday today, and to celebrate, of course, we have to have a Law-centric video. And with Wano just wrapping up recently in the manga spoilers by the way, this is a perfect time to talk about everything Law that happened in Wano, his contributions, his character development, and everything awesome that he did, because there's a lot of it. We have been with Law for quite a while, since Punk Hazard, I mean not counting Sabaody where he was introduced, and this alliance has accomplished much, but unfortunately, at the end of Wano, he does sail off to his own devices, so I just wanted to do a great send-off and happy birthday to talk about everything Wano. Hello everyone, it's Laffy Chaffy. Before we get into it, of course, if you like Law, if you're this far in, you like Law, so subscribe and like the video and comment below what other Law videos would you like me to do, or just One Piece in general, of course, I'm open to options. But if you're a fan of Law, you definitely gotta subscribe. So, starting out with the pre-raid events, we see Law hanging out with Beppo, Sachi, and Penguin, and they're just kind of hanging out, and I'm honestly going to start with a complaint here because, as far as I remember it, we don't really get any information on what Law was doing up to the point where Luffy arrives. Beppo, Sachi, and Penguin were kind of scouting. They were the ones who spotted Luffy to begin with, but we just kind of see Law lounging around, and considering all the other Straw Hats had particular jobs, it would have been cool to see if he had a job, if any, what would it be? He would have been good for like recon, looking for poneglyphs. His power, like Robin's, is really valuable in information gathering, so I wish we could have seen a little bit more of how Law was involved in the pre-planning leading up to Luffy's arrival. But we do get one of the most adorable Beppo moments in the entire series, the most adorable moment period in the entire series here, so you know, I'm not complaining too much. Now that Luffy is officially in Wano and making a ruckus as he does, Law is one of the first ones to act. He heads off Hawkins, which he knows is one of the only underlings, besides probably Drake, of Kaido's that would recognize them and know the significance of them being in Wano. So Law heads off Hawkins, and he does try to disguise himself. His basket helmet doesn't quite work with, you know, the tattoos, you know, the Jolly Roger everywhere, and the very specific abilities, but he tries. He tries, and I think his goal was definitely to, you know, get rid of Hawkins, so, you know, it didn't matter at the moment if he was found out or not, but it was very tactical of Law to say, like, okay, Luffy's here, he's making a ruckus, we gotta get Hawkins, because Hawkins knows who we are, and he's gonna tell Kaido, so let's try and, you know, navigate around that disaster. It didn't work, but it's Luffy, so, you know, you can only do so much. Law's ability to plan is not bad, it's just Luffy. But Law versus Hawkins was really cool to see two, like, tactical fighters, more intelligent-based fighters square off, both with very strange abilities, and then also really cool to see Law able to kind of diagnose Hawkins' abilities and see, okay, so you're using your minions as lives, let's get rid of all your lives. There, done. And then we slash right at Hawkins. So it was really cool to see Law deduce what his abilities were doing and how to nullify it as quickly and efficiently as possible. After the ordeal with Hawkins and everything, Law escorts Luffy to Oden Castle, to the plot, to Kinemon, to figure out what everyone's job is going to be now that the raid is coming closer. So it was very plot important that Law was there to be like, alright, let's round you all up, you're here in Wano, congrats, okay, let's go to the plan now. He also kept the rest of the crew from engaging Kaido when Luffy had his roid rage moment when Kaido was revealed to be a dragon and, you know, attacks the town that they were just helping. Luffy runs off and Law's like, okay, well, they know that I'm here, they know that Luffy's here, let's at least keep it at that so that they don't think that our entire crews are here too, because that would be a little bit more significant. So again, Law's trying to mitigate the disaster that is Luffy and the Straw Hats, you know, no matter what's happening. So he's constantly trying to keep everything in check there. He even keeps a level head when Oden's castle is destroyed, which could have also taken all of their crew with them, all their friends as well. He keeps a level head even through that, as Luffy is, like I said, roid raging, ready to get back at Kaido. And then even when Luffy attacks Kaido and outs himself as, you know, Law is like, okay, maybe he didn't see what happened, let's go. No, Luffy's still gonna attack Kaido. Okay, yeah, now Luffy got one shot. Well, let's pick this up, and he tries to take Luffy's body, unconscious, one-shot body, out of there, and so that they would both be safe, but Hawkins intervenes and prevents Law from doing so. That whole thing, in the very Luffy way, destroyed all the plans there, but Law was trying very hard to keep that all together for Kinemon and for just the plan's sake, for their well-being's sake. Fast forwarding a little bit, the Heart Pirates played an important role in passing out information about the raid, that little symbol that all of the samurai would know what it means, when to go, where to go, and how to go, why to go to the raid. But unfortunately, during that, Beppo, Sachi, and Penguin were all captured in order to lure out Law. And we don't really get information on how that happened or who did it, because Hawkins at that time was actually scouting after Sanji and Nami in the bathhouse thing, so I don't really know who captured them, but Hawkins was the one to make that transfer of Law for his crew, holding his crew's lives hostage in the Hawkins voodoo way that he does. So Law's imprisoned, and he makes a point to say not to tell Luffy, because previous experience and how Luffy reacted with the whole Kaido thing, it was clear that Luffy would probably try and go after and save Law, and Law was like, he just needs to focus on the plan, he needs to get stronger, that man was one shot, we need to focus. This is just a hiccup, and luckily Drake was there to help them figure it out, because if they weren't, that would have probably been bad. The Heart Pirates were going to try and rescue Law, but with Hawkins there, and possibly Hawkins would be able to use Law as a voodoo sacrifice, so I don't think that would have went very well. But luckily Drake was there. So he was interrogated and tortured by Hawkins and Drake, and Queen was actually going to stumble in too, but luckily Big Mom came in and distracted Queen from showing up, because Queen was introduced as quite a lover of torture, so I don't think that would have went very well for Law. With just Hawkins there, you know, we get one of the really badass moments of Law where he is like bloodied, he's handcuffed, but he just crosses his arms and he just smirks. He's like, Hawkins, you can do whatever you want, but you are not getting anything out of me. You know, Hawkins wanted information about the plan, about their alliance, but Law was just, nope. And once the Heart Pirates were freed, Beppo, Sachi, and Penguin were also able to pass along very important information about the update that Yasuie gave to the raid symbol for Kinemon. That led Nami and the group to give Kinemon that information, where they added the 2 lines, changing the location of the meetup for the raid, so that was very important too. Overall, leading up to the raid, I think Law played a very important part, and, you know, a part that Law often plays, of trying to round up the Straw Hats, because although it's impossible and it never works, he tried to keep them controlled and tried to keep them on the plan, and then of course he also witnessed Luffy's takedown by the hands of Kaido, which I feel was pretty significant too, because by no means were they underestimating Kaido, but to see firsthand that Gear 4th Luffy, the Gear 4th that, after a long drawn-out fight, took down Doflamingo, was one-shot by Kaido, I feel like that was a pretty significant event to happen to Law, and be like, okay, yeah, no, we need to focus. Luffy needs to focus. We don't really see the weeks leading up. I think there was 2-week time skip leading up to the raid, and we don't really know what Law was doing there, but based on what we see later, it's clear that he was definitely focusing his strength and abilities on the upcoming fight. Overall, the pre-raid was really cool, but once the raid starts, that's where we get some really, really awesome Law moments. First being him showing up with Kid and Luffy to save the samurai, the scabbards from the water, being in the rowboat in the storm, with the Beast Pirates looming over them after they were betrayed by Kanjuro. Law's submarine actually comes up from underneath the scabbards to save them from their little rowboat, and saying, like, you know, you shouldn't underestimate the ocean, scabbards. Now, Law's task here was to secretly circumvent the island and the whirlpools and tides and currents that were surrounding the island to get to the back to bring the scabbards to the back door entrance and sneak up behind the island. And it was really cool. I'm personally very glad that Law having a submarine was a very important plot point, similar to how they were able to escape in Marineford. Him having a submarine is very important and not something you see often. I think we've only seen maybe one other submarine cannon in the One Piece world, not counting the shark tank. So to know that Law has a submarine built for like subterfuge and stealth missions, it was really cool that we were able to take advantage of that. And so Law used his abilities, got the scabbards on the island, and they were ready for their sneak attack. He also brought Beppo, Sachi, and Penguin along with him, and the rest of the Heart Pirates stayed behind in the submarine. The four of them, the four Heart Pirates, make their way onto the island with the scabbards. Now, right before the official rooftop roof piece fight against Kaido, Law has a really awesome scene where he's actually looking for the poneglyphs on his own. He's slashing through opponents and trying to look for the road poneglyph, and he has a really cute moment where he's thinking back to Corazon and just talking about how he is determined now to find out what the Will of D means, because it's a very important thing for him, for Corazon, and everything that's been leading up to this point for Law has really revolved around the Will of D. And so we even see a really awesome moment with him and Robin where they talk about the Will of D. And while Robin states that she doesn't have the information that he seeks, the information that he seeks will be with the poneglyphs. When you find out the Void Century and the true history of the world, that's when you'll find out about the Will of D. So she kind of guides him in that sense, that while Luffy doesn't care, she does, and she's seeking it as well. And that's where Law really fits in very well in this dynamic of having the Will of D and also seeking out the meaning behind it, because Robin cares but doesn't have the Will of D, and then Luffy has the Will of D but doesn't care. So Law has both of those things going for him, and I think that he plays a very important role in the Will of D for sure. And him declaring that he wants to find out the true meaning behind his middle initial also is a very important character development moment, because there were a lot of theories that Law was going to die on Wano, and luckily he did not. But the theories were abound that his character arc kind of got wrapped up with the whole Doflamingo revenge and avenging Corazon. So people speculated that now that his character arc is kind of complete, there's nowhere really for him in the future, and that the best thing he could do is probably do the youth surgery, which could be like a really important plot point if that happens, probably for Luffy, if it would to happen. I hope it doesn't, but that's another topic. That's another topic of discussion. It's important that Law has a new goal, because this moment here sets that, yes, he still has a dream, he has a goal, and working with Robin, he has a very clear, very solid place at the end of the series. And so he's not dying anytime soon. Now Law fights against Kaido with Luffy, Zoro, Kid, and Killer. The five of them go at it against Kaido and Big Mom, and they have a lot of really great dynamic scenes and fighting and action. And it was just perfect. But personally, my favorites when it comes to Law was whenever Kaido or Big Mom would directly address Law and his like pesky powers, how they were annoying, and just kind of them calling out that he's a tricky fighter that they're trying to work around and don't really understand. And though he was against the concept, he was a fantastic battlefield manipulator, where he was able to reposition the allies, save them multiple times, and get them in advantageous positions, like especially with Zoro, getting him up higher and higher so he can do that giant Enma attack against Kaido. It was really cool to see that Law was really, really imperative in making sure that they all survived, because he saved their asses multiple times. And we got a new technique called Curtain, where he was able to bring up a force field or some sort of barrier between him and the attacker. And we're not entirely sure if that was supposed to just lessen the damage or entirely block it, but with Kaido, he did get sent flying anyway, and that's not to say that his technique didn't work, that's just to say that it's Kaido. So I'm interested to see in the future if that was, how that would work with another opponent maybe. Now once Luffy takes control of the fight and the rest are going elsewhere, he takes Zoro, who has broken every bone in his body, and brings him safely to Sanji to take care of. Which is a funny point because speculating Law's role in the raid, you'd say like, oh well, he's a doctor, so he's surely gonna play a big role in healing people maybe, and like at least for the aftermath and things like that. With Zoro, you know, he was totally obliterated from those attacks, so we should probably help him out. No, Law really didn't have any, not a single moment where he was a doctor and an only doctor. Honestly, I would prefer Law being on the front lines anyway. It's just worth mentioning that he really didn't do any doctoring in this arc at all. But you know, sometimes the most important thing you can do as a healer is take care of the threat directly. It's true. And now the Big Mom fight. The Big Mom fight is really where we get into some amazing Law action. Because while the 2v5 was impressive and it was just chaos, this 2v1 now with Kid and Law versus Big Mom, we get to really focus in on everyone's powers, Big Mom's, Kid's, and especially Law's. Specifically, of course, the Awakening. We get K-Room and R-Room. K-Room being the ability to put a room on his sword and elongate it. Give his sword the properties of an enhanced rune, basically, able to manipulate things and pierce through things and counter shock, things like that. But we got Anesthesia, which prevents the attack itself from hurting the target so that it could be kind of stealthy and also go straight through the person, bypassing any defenses, aka Big Mom's hardened exterior that was a big problem for them being able to attack her efficiently. Then once inside, he was able to do a shock will, which was like a counter shock but from inside and possibly even affecting the soul, because Big Mom reacted very, very violently to it, and even her homies were like pushed back from the attack. So that was a devastating attack. And then of course his final attack, the puncture will, where he had Big Mom pinned on the ground and he sent his sword straight into the actual ground. So not even just the island, through the island onto the actual ground of Wano, and just made an obliterating attack, sent a shockwave that traveled the length of the sword, a very, very long sword, and just destroy Big Mom completely. And then in the meantime, while this is all happening, he also had our room, which is a room that he was able to put on someone else. And he also didn't have to be in it, so as opposed to a stationary room where he was in, he was able to put a room on Big Mom, and it actually traveled with Big Mom as she was falling off Onigashima. And then, to top it all off, my favorite technique is silence. He was able to prevent sound from traveling in or out of the R room that was around Big Mom, clearly an homage to Corazon, as we can see that while the silence fruit is often joked on, it can be very devastating if used in the correct way. AKA with Big Mom, for instance, she was not able to send any commands to any of her homies to ask for help or command them to do anything. She was just falling and she fell. So it was really, really sweet too, and I was not expecting it, just to be clear. I was not expecting a Corazon moment there, where he was able to basically just recreate Corazon's fruit based on that big room, which they both have in common, that spherical dome that they can control. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful and especially effective against Big Mom, so it was a perfect finishing attack. Overall, we see some impressive feats from Law in terms of stamina, durability, and creativity with his devil fruit, because I mean, he just did one attack after another, and the defense incredible as Big Mom was just beating on him as he was puncture willing her at the final moments. She was beating on him with her bare fists. And it was just a brutal, brutal moment. I highly recommend watching or reading the end of that fight, because it is intense with him and Kid and everything. It's fantastic. It's really well choreographed and really highlights Law's abilities in every aspect. And we can really see how far he's come since Dressrosa, for sure. Now, post-raid, you'd think that everything is winding down here, but in terms of Law moments, we get a very, very important moment here with him and Robin in discovering information about the poneglyphs and the ancient weapon. Law is around in very important moments, especially back on Zoe. He was there with the rest of the Straw Hats as they were talking about the poneglyphs, how to get to Laugh Tale, what Lodestar is. All of this information Law was privy to, and now he's with Robin, finding out more about the poneglyphs. He got the rubbing of one, and you know, the two of them diving deep and talking about ancient histories, and it's great. It's great. It's great. I really need to see them end game talk about like the Will of D and the true history and stuff, and I hope Law is there when that happens, because it just has to. It has to. But he ends up giving Kid a rubbing of the poneglyph as well, which is kind of funny because Kid and Killer were like, oh, yeah, so they did have a poneglyph. I guess that's important to take. Law's like, here you go. You earned it fair and square. So it was very sportsmanlike of Law to give Kid the copy of the poneglyph too. Overall, I would say that his departure, though, at the very end, all the captains leaving, it left a lot to be desired in terms of officially ending the grand Luffy-Law alliance, because that has been a thing since Punk Hazard, which in real time has been a long time, but also in their world, they've been through a lot together, and Law and Luffy have accomplished a lot of feats, taking down Doflamingo, going up against Kaido, saving Wano. I just feel like it didn't do it quite justice to just Law said an offhanded comment like, oh, and by the way, we're enemies now, so yeah, keep that in mind. The alliance is over. I don't know. I didn't need a whole going away party thrown for them. I didn't need a cake, but I just feel like, you know, a handshake, you know, something like, hey, thanks for everything. It's been cool, but you know, watch your back on the seas now, because we're enemies, you know, something a little bit more meaningful. But no, it was just kind of offhanded comment. But the way that they all sailed off over the waterfall because Kid taunted them, that was pretty fitting of the three captains, so I can't argue too much. It was very funny and quite a grand departure from Wano. But that is Wano, that is the raid. Going forward, just to talk a little bit about Law, because now he is going his own way. In the future, I would love to see some more techniques, a greater mastery of his devil fruit, because he himself said that he's not very comfortable with doing that yet. So going forward, I would really like to see all the things that he comes up with his awakening and his devil fruit. It's clear his fight against Doflamingo really strengthened his abilities, so it's safe to say that his fight against Big Mom and Kaido will do the same. And so going forward at the end of series, I'm really excited to see just how far he can push his abilities. Now, where's Law heading? That's a great question, because based on the directions and everything, he's supposedly heading to Elbaf. Now, I know Luffy's not quite going towards Whitebeard's Island like that was said, but he kind of had a detour perhaps, so Law could very well still be heading towards Elbaf. And considering Elbaf is a very important island that all the Straw Hats definitely need to visit sometime soon, perhaps the Law reunion will happen sooner rather than later. Because god, if it happens to be like they finally get to Elbaf and like the giants of Elbaf are like, oh man, yeah, you know, you just missed Trafalgar Law, one of your peers. He was just on the island. He just left yesterday though. You just missed him, man. That guy, he's a hoot. That would be really frustrating. So hopefully maybe we can get we can meet back up with Law pretty soon on Elbaf. That would be fantastic. But end of series, you know, is he going to be going up against the world government? Is he going to have a place on Laugh Tale with finding the Will of D with Robin? All of these are yeses in my book, because I want Law to be as involved in the end of series and the series in general as possible. So, but that's a whole really other topic to discuss. That's probably a whole video in of itself. So let me know if you do want me to discuss the future of Law and what the end of series looks like for Law, because hopefully the entire end of series is just Law. It's actually just going to be continuing his adventure. We're not going to follow Luffy anymore, we're just going to follow Law. And then we'll find the One Piece. But anyway, just here to say that Law is awesome. He's a great fighter, great tactician, and he played a great role in this Wano arc. And so this was just a nice revisit. He's now on his way, on his own, not in the series anymore at the moment. So yeah, it was just a good thing to say that Wano's over. Let's look at everything that Law has accomplished, because like I said, it was a lot. And so now we will just be waiting for Law to return to the series once more, and I will be crying every day until that happens. So everyone have a great Law day, morning, night, or evening, wherever you are on Law's birthday today, and just remember, he's great, and he needs to be back in the series. But thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my Law talk. Bye!